Hey BookTube, welcome back. So I finished several books recently and I thought I'd go ahead and tell you a little bit about them. I finished 2 volumes of a manga, which I mentioned in a recent book haul. This is volume 5 and 6 of Girl from the Other Side by Nagabi. This is sort of a dark fantasy. The illustrations are equally dark to match. Maybe a little stark at times, but it's definitely suited to this particular story about a world split in two, inside where the humans live and the outside where the beasts live. I would imagine there's some sort of walled off community, but I don't remember anything about a wall being discussed. But they are divided, and this little girl named Shiva finds herself on the outside, and she is being protected by a beast named Teacher, who looks after her, protects her from the other beasts. If you are touched by a beast, you're cursed and become one. There's also more to that than I'm I think, understanding at times. I almost feel like I want to go back and reread some parts of this. I do find myself a little lost at points, but I'm still intrigued enough to want to know more. There's something special about the girl Shiva. She is not only wanted by the beasts, but also soldiers from her own community are hunting her down. And in volume 6, the two of them are kind of leaving their home and are on the run to try and escape the soldiers. It's intriguing, like I said, at times confusing, but enough that I want to keep following the story and find out what's going to happen. And there's definitely a bit of a cliffhanger at the end of this one, so I'm looking forward to the next volume. I also finished a book that I had originally started during the Reading Rush Readathon, and this is The Girl Who Circumnavigated Fairyland in a Ship of Her Own Making by Catherine M. Valente. It's a middle grade book, very much reminiscent of Wizard of Oz. As you're reading this story, you'll see lots of parallels. We have a young girl by the name of September, as opposed to Dorothy. She is whisked away to Fairyland, as opposed to Oz, by the green wind, as opposed to a tornado. She meets some interesting creatures that speak. They join her on a quest. Not unlike the Straw Man, the Tin Man, and the Cowardly Lion, we have a Waverary, as he's nicknamed. He's part Waverin and part library. His father was a library of some sort. He's named A through L because he has had a chance to study, I guess, the encyclopedic works of A through L. So he knows all sorts of facts from there, and he imparts that knowledge to September on her journey. There is sort of a evil ruler of the land, in this case the Marquess, as opposed to Oz, who she's sent off on a journey to retrieve something. In this case, it's something from a specific box as opposed to a broom. So, as you see, loads and loads of parallels. At first, I didn't quite like the character of September, kind of indifferent to her. She mentioned something about a dog that I like. She doesn't like dogs? What? So instantly I took a little disliking to her. But anyway, I did become very sympathetic towards the character. I love the progression of her overall throughout the story, being challenged in these different things that she comes across, and just how brave she is, the things that she has to face. And I really did enjoy it. I enjoyed it for what it was. I don't know that I want to continue with the rest of the books in the series. I think there's 4 more books should another readathon come along, and I'm looking for something to read. It would be fairly quick, so that might be a possibility somewhere down the road, but for now I'm kind of happy with having just read this one. I also read a book on my Kindle called Susanna Morrow by Megan Chance. This is a book that I was drawn to because I read one of her other books recently, which was okay, but when I saw the name, I had to pick it up because my full name is Suzanne Morrow. Now it's spelt a little differently than that, but you know, when you have a book practically named after you, I had to try it out. It says it's the story of a woman accused, her accuser, and the man who loves them both. It is a novel of Salem. So the Salem witch trials, as you can imagine, it doesn't take rocket scientists to figure out that the title character here is going to be accused of being a witch. Now Megan Chance has taken facts from the Salem witch trials. She's taking characters from that time, actual people, put them in her novel and mix them in with various fictional characters that she has created, including Susanna Morrow. The story is told in 3 parts. Part 1 is from Charity's perspective. Part 2 is from Lucas's perspective. That's her father. And part 3 is from Charity's aunt, Susanna. That's her mother's sister. As the story opens up, her mother is just died, having given birth. Susanna arrives just in time to say goodbye, and it's a very, very sad moment, as you can imagine. And Susanna decides to kind of stay on and kind of look after everybody as they're going through their grief and all. Charity very much wants to kind of prepare her mother for burial. She asks her father to let her do this, to let her dress her mother and everything, but he says, no, leave that to your aunt, let her do it. And it's as if for some reason he doesn't trust her to do it or something, I don't know. And she's very upset by this. But when the father leaves, Susanna says, you go ahead and do it. We just won't tell your father. And she's very grateful for that. But then later on, she starts to doubt these things. Her father is very puritanical, very, tell the truth. Anything else is a sin. It's, devil's influence and all this stuff. And all this starts to kind of play on her mind. Her grief kind of accentuating all these things and these feelings. She starts to hang out with old friends that she was warned to stay away from by not only her mother, but also her father. And now she's hanging around with them, not telling her father. And they do all sorts of really bad things that you would think that would turn her away from as well. I mean, she's also lying to her father by hanging out with them. So that they do like spells and things like that. They're talking about witchcraft and stuff. And all this stuff is playing on her mind. And I felt this aspect of the story was a bit hypocritical of the character. Just say, she starts seeing like evil in her aunt for, telling her to, tell these lies to her father, but yet then she is lying to him. She is doing these spells and stuff like that, which should be seen as very, bad, yet she's doing them. So I found that little aspect of the character very hypocritical. But the more she hangs around with these kids, these the girls, the worse she gets, the more terrified she becomes of her aunts, and her whole behavior gets really weird. Her father, when the perspective shifts, you see that he just seems to be oblivious to a lot of things happening, and Susanna keeps trying to warn him about situations going on with her daughter. It's like things he just doesn't see. There's a kind of a romantic relationship that starts to develop between Lucas and Susanna that I didn't really see that coming. I mean, it just didn't seem so plausible in the time or the way the situation was unraveling for that to even develop. So that kind of bothered me. But I like the shifting perspective and seeing things from different points of view, particularly Susanna's perspective at the end. It is a terrifying time in history, and seeing it from specific characters and seeing it unravel was, I think, really good. So I think overall it was a decent read, not a fantastic read. Just kind of it was okay, but enjoyable and entertaining and intriguing. But like I said, there are parts that do drag a little bit, and things that kind of annoy me with the young girl's behavior and stuff like that. But it leaves you guessing at the end. Not really sure. I guess it's left to you to decide the overall outcome. Sorry about this lighting. I'm right by a window, but it's the best lighting I could find because it's kind of a rainy day. But anyway, yeah, if you sounds interesting to you, give Megan a chance. I also finished Anthony Trollope's final book in the Palliser series. This is The Duke's Children. This is part of a 6-book series where you're following Plantagenet Palliser, his eventual marriage to Lady Glencora, his rise inheriting the position of the Duke of Omnium and becoming Prime Minister. That was the previous book to this one, was the Prime Minister, a position he didn't really want to hold in government. He felt like, it almost feels like he's just on the outskirts, not doing the work, and he wants to be involved in the work, and I think he's much more suited to the Chancellor of the Exchequer position. But his wife, Lady Glencora, absolutely loved him being the Prime Minister in the position it gave her in society. But anyway, you're following those two main characters. Lots of other characters came in and out of the stories as the books went along. Some really interesting, like Lady Eustace. The Eustace Diamonds was probably one of my favorites in the series because she's just so despicable. I loved hating her throughout that whole story. But yeah, during that whole time, you never really hear anything about the Duke's children. So they're kind of like thrown at you in this book. I have no sense of family between, their upbringing or anything like that. So maybe, I'm wondering, it would have been more interesting if you had some aspects of family life amongst them besides just Lady Glencora in relationship to her husband. But as the story opened up, I was warned, don't read this first line until you finish the other book. Don't like kind of take a peek ahead. That's what Steve Donahue warned us. He was hosting the readathon for this, or read along. And so I didn't. But I would have loved to have filmed my reaction to the first line. And if you haven't read the series and you're interested, don't want any spoilers, wait till I put the book down, because I'm going to spoil it a little bit. But it's not so much, because it does kind of mention it in the back. And somehow I managed to miss that, and then I didn't really pay attention too much, even the chapter heading. But as you're reading the Prime Minister, it was hinting towards maybe ill health with the Duke. And I thought, okay, maybe he's getting sick. Maybe something's going to happen to him in the, the other book. And then whammo, surprise. Chapter 1, when the Duchess was dead. No one probably ever felt himself to be more alone in the world than our old friend, the Duke of Omnium, when the Duchess died. And I was like, no! I did not see that coming. I really liked the character. She was very entertaining, very sure of herself and kind of controlling and wanting to get her thoughts in on everything. I really enjoyed her character, and I was just so shocked to find her gone. But the Duke, I don't know, I'd say he's such a family man. It's like, it's even mentioned in here that he pretty much left the raising of his children to tutors and his wife. That he seems a bit on the outside. And as this story unfolds, I felt him a bit of like a Polonius character from Hamlet. He dispenses advice. And I'm sure his children love him, and they do. You can see they do. They hate to disappoint him, but they don't always follow his advice. We have 3 children. We have Lord Silverbridge, his eldest son, George, his second son, who doesn't really feature that heavily or make that much of an impression in the book, and then Lady Mary, the daughter. And it's about their relationships, their future, their mistakes, the disappointments they cause, but also the Duchess and how he felt a bit betrayed. She has knowledge, or had knowledge, prior to her death, of a building relationship between her daughter, Lady Mary, and a young man named Frank Tregear. And he's a man of no ability, no standing, no money in the family, and would be a very unsuitable match for the daughter of the Duke, in the Duke's opinion. And Madame Max, who was Lady Glencora's very dear friend, became aware of this after Lady Glencora's death, that she, knew of this relationship. She was actually in favor of it. When she hears about it and realizes the Duke does not know, she insists that either Frank or Mary tell the Duke, inform him of this relationship. And she eventually does. In fact, Frank Tregear approaches the Duke and asks for the daughter's hand in marriage, which he's affronted by this. Who is this person to ask for his daughter? And he absolutely refuses any relationship and says it's not going to happen, basically. And then when he comes to find out that his wife was aware of this, he's upset. He finds out that Madame Max knew this, and he's upset with her, thinking that she withheld this information. And that relationship was never very strong. It was more, she was a friend of his wife, not of his. But he came to accept it. Now he's furious, thinking that she betrayed him and all this. And there's a tense relationship between them. And I liked how that whole storyline played out with the two of them. So the Duke finds out about this marriage, and he's adamant, no, this is not going to happen. With regards to the 2 boys, they both end up being tossed out of school for things they shouldn't have done. That's a great disappointment to the father. It goes on further where Lord Silverbridge decides to enter into Parliament, but not on the Liberal side, instead of like this father, but on the Conservative side. So again, another disappointment. It seems to be one piled upon the other upon the other. Lord Silverbridge and Frank Tregear happen to be acquaintances. Tregear is a conservative, so he feels, again, that perhaps he misled his son into this, so another point against him. It just spirals out of control, basically. And then Lord Silverbridge leads his father to believe that he's in love with one Mabel Grex, a person of good name, not necessarily money, but a good match for his son, and then his feelings go towards instead a young American. Now, that situation too, it seemed very sudden, but as the story is kind of explained, I kind of understand why Silverbridge's affections switched, but it did seem rather quick. So it turned me kind of off to his character, but he eventually has to tell his father that he's in love with an American. You can imagine how the Duke feels about that. Again, he's not happy with that, and it's very different feelings he eventually has for the whole situation. Although he dislikes the fact that he's thinking of marrying an American, he's bending more towards allowing that than he is with his daughter. And it's like, okay, well, as if it's okay for the man to decide than for, the woman to decide that, she can marry for love. If he's in love with her, okay, whatever. She's going to be the future Duchess of Omnium. So it was, yeah, that kind of pissed me off about the character of the Duke. But I love how the story, like you watch how these relationships are unraveling, and you see the Duke sort of changing and kind of accepting his faults too, and his hard sense of propriety and what's expected of the marriages of his kids and the future of his kids. But he seemed to accept a lot more disappointments from his son than he did his daughter, and that kind, like I said, it pissed me off. But overall, I really enjoyed it. It's very accessible writing. The ending seems kind of sudden to me, though, too. I was reading some of the notes, and this book was originally much longer before it was edited for publication, and I think there is an unedited version out there somewhere that was published. I think Stephen mentioned it on his channel, and it does show what that final ending would have been like, and I think I like that better, but it sort of hints that maybe there'd be another book that would continue with the story of these children after they're married, and maybe their children's or something like that. But this kind of puts an end and just makes a final stamp on that whole series. But I really enjoyed it. I understand that Plantagenet Palliser appears in the Barchester series, so somewhere down the road I will pick up that series as well. But I'm looking forward to reading more Anthony Trollope. I also finished a couple other books, and I don't have them. I can't show you right now because they're on my camera, which I'm filming with right now, but I'll insert some pictures of it. One of them is The Dispatcher by John Scalzi. I absolutely love his books because of the unique plot lines he comes up with. The Dispatcher's set in a world not too far in the future where you can't be killed. You can die from disease, accident, something along that lines. But if someone tries to kill you, you poof, disappear for a second, and suddenly you're back in your home, and you're okay. Like everything before that situation. You'll remember how you died, but you're physically the way you were right before that incident happened. And we follow our main character, Tony Valdez. He's a dispatcher, a licensed professional dispatcher. So he is assigned to various situations. Say like an insurance company might call you in, say, as the book opens, he's called in to attend a surgery. So if the surgery goes bad, if the doctor's going to lose the patient and you can't bring them back before they die, he actually dispatches them with a special tool. So he kills them off, and they poof, disappear, and they're back home the way they were before the operation. They may still need an operation, but you could try again, So it's a very weird, twisted plot. But he was apparently filling in for another dispatcher because they couldn't make that job. And you come to learn that something's happened to that dispatcher. He's disappeared. And now he's kind of dragged into this investigation. And you're following the whole dark aspect of the profession on the black market side, or whatever you want to call it. And it's really, really interesting. Very, very well done. I love Scalzi's books. I think it's like my fourth one now. This one was an audiobook read by Zachary Quinto. You might know him as Spock on the new Star Trek movies. And most of the ones I've listened to have been by Will Wheaton, also really, really good, probably my favorite narrator, but Zachary Quinto did a great job, so I recommend that one on audio as well. Some of the books I'm currently reading, I finally picked up Teeth in the Mist by Dawn Kurtagich. An intriguing cover. This is the book, it's a horror book. It's about a Medwin Millhouse. I'm only like that far in, you can see that. So I've just started it, but Medwin Millhouse, and this is set in like 3 time frames. One around the time the mill house is built, and then later on a young girl who is kind of adopted after the death of her father and sent to live there, and lots of weird things going on. And then further in the future from that point is a girl who goes there to investigate something because of the mystery around her father and what happened there. It's really, really good. Like, her writing all the time is so good. I've read her other 2 books. There's lots of really interesting visual effects throughout the book that the author herself has put in. And that's creepy. So yeah, I'm really, really enjoying that one. I had to go away today, and I wanted to bring a book with me and didn't want to really kind of drag this big hardcover around, so I picked up another paperback, and this is another horror book that I could kind of carry around easier. And it's a recent book purchase. This is Craven Manor by Darcy Coates. It's about a young man named Daniel who is in desperate need of a job, and he's having problems with his roommate. He's not able to really pay that much rent. I mean, he's never late with it, but the roommate says he's going to have to get another roommate or whatever if he doesn't get a job. And so one day he sees this envelope slid under their door with his name on it, saying, they're offering him a job as a groundskeeper at this manor. He's given directions on how to get there. He decides to just kind of go check it out, because why is there not an address? Why is it just directions? He has to pretty much go through these woods. He almost doesn't even see the place, and it's very dilapidated. And the cover is kind of a good image of it, but he's kind of creeped out by the place and kind of heads back home like, I don't think so. But then finds out his roommate's already gotten someone else to move in, pretty much kicked him out of his own room, says, you're going to have to sleep on the couch now because this guy's paying more rent, and he's just like, I'm not having any of it. He's fed up with it. He decides, I'm going to take the job. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. So curious to see what happens next with that. So anyway, that's everything I've read or am reading currently. What are you guys reading? Have you read any of these books, and do any of them sound good? Or did you read them? What did you think about them? Let me know down below, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.